My guest today is Aimee Gallo, and you guys are in for a treat today. Aimee and I found each other on Facebook, the usual page, and um, Aimee is in Spain, and she has a podcast I she has a podcast that's very exciting for me. It's called Blasphemous Nutrition, and I you can find her on Instagram at Vibrance Nutrition. But Aimee does these really cool posts, and she is all about sort of pushing the boundaries and making us question what we have been told. And I love that. I'm all here for it. So, Aimee, thank you so much
Yes.
for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited that we're
Oh,
doing this. If
and
there
Aimee just,
is,
yeah, Aimee just went to the Olympics. She was like, I'm just a couple hours away. I really just want to, I just want to be part of that.
yeah. I mean, we're still pretty recent expats, and really the first year abroad was about, oh my gosh, what is even happening, and how do I wash my clothes, and how do I ask for stamps, and how do I find food to eat that I like, what is this about? And now that we're kind of a little bit more settled in, we just want to get as much as we possibly can out of the experience because life is short and unpredictable. And I don't know if we get to spend the rest of our lives here or not, but I'm gonna live as though we don't. And given the Olympics was so close, I was like, well, shoot, I will probably regret not taking a cheap ass flight to Paris
Oh,
to watch some runners
yeah.
like run their hearts out. And it was amazing. It was amazing.
Oh my gosh, it's all so exciting. And we were already talking about that, how just the energy that's involved in the Olympics. But so Aimee just posted and we've been talking about nutrition a lot, just the two of us. And she obviously posts about that, but just I think it was yesterday she did this post about electrolytes and hydration. And I was like, it just made me think, like the things that she says, the things that you say, Aimee, since you're right here, are they just make me think and think about, is everything that I've been told, is everything that I know, is that all there is? And I love that. I love that you're just like, I mean, I say pushing boundaries, but you're just like, maybe that's not all there is. And so her post about the electrolytes was like, you know, there are different types and there are different ways that like different cocktails that you can do. And I was like, oh, I thought it was just like a tablet that you put in your water. Um, and that was for people like athletes, And so it just made me think. It made me think. And I love that because I am a creature of habit and I sit on my butt most of the day. And so I'm like, why would I need that? Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that's an unreasonable belief to have. Electrolytes are marketed to us as something for athletes, as something for people who are working in the heat outside. And we don't think about what they really are. We think of them as like a supplement for sweaty people,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But electrolytes are essential minerals, potassium, magnesium, and sodium, that facilitate the contracting and relaxing of muscles, that help with fluid balance in the body. And there are a lot of things that can throw that off kilter aside from just exercise. And as our summers are getting hotter and hotter, and our diets, the foods that we eat are getting more and more nutrient depleted, like I'm finding electrolytes are really, really handy for individuals who maybe they are not active, but they are for instance, if you're on a low carbohydrate diet,
Mm.
you won't actually be holding on you won't actually be, so if you are on a low carbohydrate diet, you won't actually be holding on to as much water in your body as someone who is eating a normal carbohydrate diet. And so, because when we store carbohydrates in the liver and in the muscles, it's stored as a molecule called glycogen, which is the glucose, that sugar, with 3 water molecules attached to it. And that's the form that gets put in the liver, gets put in the muscles. So then later on, when you need that carbohydrate because it's been 3 hours since lunch, or because you are, going on an afternoon jog, or you're running across the parking lot after your child who's sprinting away from you, because
Right.
we all know that happens,
Hmm.
your body will pull that glucose out of storage and use it for quick available energy, right? So
Okay.
when it does that, in order to access that original glucose molecule, it snips off the water. Now, in a normal carbohydrate diet, your next meal, you replenish your carbohydrates, that water then gets attached to any extra glucose, right? But if you are on a low carbohydrate diet, that extra water is not needed because you do not have as much glycogen stores in the muscles, in the liver, because you're on a low carbohydrate diet, right?
Hmm.
So you're holding on to less water weight. And anybody who has ever done Atkins, or any other low carbohydrate diet, keto, right? The first week or two, you get that whoosh, that drop of weight that's really sexy and glamorous and very exciting. And it is mostly water that you're losing because you're going through those stored carbohydrates. You're going through that glycogen. You're using up that glucose first, and then your body is shedding the water. Now, when your body sheds that water, it also sheds magnesium and potassium and sodium that is in that water. And so for individuals who stay on a low carbohydrate diet, their potassium needs, their magnesium needs, and their sodium needs are higher because they're not keeping as much of that in their body. And if anybody has ever gone on a low carbohydrate diet, or anybody in general, because potassium and magnesium are also chronically underconsumed in the American diet,
Hmm.
you may experience things like muscle cramps, headaches, brain fog, fatigue, high blood pressure. These are just some of the symptoms
Oops.
of electrolyte imbalance. Yeah, and how common is that? How many of us are tired? How many of us, have episodic muscle cramps? How many of us have brain fog and we like can't think
Yes.
clearly? And we think it's just because we're tired or we're getting old, or, and it's so much of what we put up with is due to not having a the deeply nutrient dense diet that we need. And what we think of as a nutrient dense diet is not actually very nutrient dense.
Oh gosh. Do you see, you guys? This is what, like, her posts were just like mind blowing for me. And I was like, but I don't, I work at my desk all day. So why would I need this? But then you say something like this, and I'm like, oh, why have I not been like, why has this not been suggested sooner? Like, why are we not understanding this? Why is this not something that's part of our normal life? But so that is so helpful. I mean, that information in general is so helpful, but I know that there's so much more. There's so much more.
There's so
And
much.
so
I've spent
definitely,
I've spent my life in
uh,
nutrition books, and I started studying nutrition when I was 12 years old.
oh my
So
gosh. So you've got lots of time of studying. And so,
yeah.
folks, if something like this interests you, uh, definitely check out the podcast. I will be doing that myself, but she has so much. And so one of the things that so you said you started at 12. You started
Mhm,
learning about this at 12. Why
mhm.
12?
Right? Why?
Girl, you were like preteen. You're supposed to be thinking about boys. Like what is this?
I mean, I think I still had New Kids on the Block posters in my room at that point in time as well.
Right?
So I wasn't 100% nerd. But what happened, and I know this is going to resonate so much with your audience. What happened is, I was 12 years old. I was in a bookstore. I've always loved reading. And on the end cap of Walden Books, if anybody remembers Walden Books, there was a book called 101 Ways to Save the Animals. And I'm 12. I love animals, right? My mom loves animals. We would rescue animals off the street and rehome them, right? You know, take in birds and like we we've always been a very pro animal home. And I thought, you know, at 12, I thought, oh, this is going to be about dolphin safe tuna and saving the rainforest. And unbeknownst to me, this book was written by the founder of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And so my
Uh,
12-year-old brain was suddenly exposed to the horrible behavior that humans perpetuate on other sentient beings. It was an education on fur farms and animal testing and factory farms. I didn't know any of that existed. And so, relatively quickly, practically overnight, I became one of those militant, annoying animal rights activists. And for context, this was in the 1990s in Anchorage, Alaska.
oh,
So I was definitely an outlier. But I started an animal rights activist group in junior high school. And after about a year of this, I had this really difficult come to Jesus moment with myself where I was like, you cannot be an animal, this is, you know, was my self-dialogue. You cannot be an animal rights activist and eat meat and be in integrity.
mhm.
And so I became a vegetarian. And there were some family members that were concerned about that choice, particularly as a young girl. Specifically concerned about my protein adequacy and whether or not I would get enough iron on a vegetarian diet. And my 12-year-old logic said, well, the entire nation of India is vegetarian, which is actually not true. And they're fine, also not true in entirety, especially in the 90s. And so this, you know, I just need to educate them. And so I went to the library and, you know, I went out to feed my confirmation bias and I went and I looked at books on vegetarian diets. And in my process of justifying my choice to my family, I came to understand that the degree to which what we put on our plate serves to enhance our health or destroy our health over time. And that was also a conversation that had never occurred in our household. Food was what you eat to stop being hungry.
Mhm.
And that was kind of, you know, aside from candy's bad for you, soda's bad for you, that was sort of just kind of how the sum of it. And so to discover these things that, and this was, you know, this was the 1990s vegetarian movement, which I have to say is very, very, very similar to what we're seeing right now in terms of how, well, now we call it plant-based, which is, I have so many judgments about that label. America's already eating a plant-based diet because over 60% of our calories are coming from starches, which are found in plants, right? So, I mean, plant-based is, anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole unless you goad me into it. Where was I? I've lost
Uh,
myself.
so 90s vegetarian movement.
90s vegetarian movement, yes. So, in reading these books about vegetarian nutrition, I was also learning the other arguments for a meatless diet, like the environment, right? Animal rights.
Mm.
And again, I'm 12, 13 years old, and I'm just starting to become aware how I, as a human, can have an impact on the world around me. And so it was very formative. It was a very formative education during a very delicate time of my life. And that's what brought me into nutrition. I am no longer a vegetarian, which may surprise a lot of people. And but I never stopped being utterly fascinated with how healing and powerful and medicinal food is.
Mm, right. And
It,
it's so true, like what you were saying, we're given food, our meals to stop hunger, not to heal and nourish so much.
yeah, it's not part of the conversation, right? And if it's ever mentioned at the table, it's like, eat this, it's good for you. But that's such an abstraction that it doesn't really hold a lot of meaning for anyone who is told that.
Why? Why is it good for me? What
Yeah, exactly.
about that is good for me? Why? Yeah. Yep. And so your little 12-year-old brain was spinning, right? Oh my gosh. And the rest of us were just we were just not even thinking about that.
Not even thinking about it. No, why would you? I mean, and it will, I mean, I will say to some extent, it ruined the rest of my childhood because everyone else I went to school with was, being normal teenagers, and I was concerned about the end of the planet and suffering, and it was not the happiest time of my life, that's for sure.
Right. I mean, as Brene Brown would call it, melancholy. Like,
Yes.
how can you go through a life so happy? Like it's just there's so much happening. Yeah, got that. Okay. And so that's intense. That's intense. Like and so did you buy that book with your own money? Like did your mom
Oh, I
I'm
was by
curious.
myself. I
Yeah.
was by myself when I
Oh,
bought
okay.
it. Yeah, yeah. So I would have purchased it with my own money.
Okay. And your mom didn't, she was worried about you, but she, I, that's, it's,
My mom actually was not. Neither of my parents were worried. They thought it was a phase. They were like, "Oh, we'll take you out to steak dinner. You'll change your mind." The thing you never tell someone on the cusp of adolescence or in adolescence, you never challenge them like that. Because then it was very much a, I will
reveals.
show you.
Yeah.
I will show you how serious I am about this,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And I was a vegetarian for 13 years.
Yeah.
So I showed them.
You showed them good.
I showed them good.
Oh my gosh. Whew. And so, all right. And so then you studied nutrition,
Mhm.
like in school. Is that
Yeah, by the time I was 15, I decided that if I got a degree, people would listen to me when I told them um how they should be eating. Because again, I was one of those super annoying people. Um,
I think it's hard to not be. Like if you read something like that and at that age, it just is.
yeah, I don't even think it's necessarily the age, because if you think about anyone who is a convert,
Mhm.
anyone whose mind is blown open, right? Whether they are born again into a faith, whether they do this amazing dietary change and it totally transforms their health,
Mhm.
right? Whether they buy a Tesla and they're like, oh my gosh, my life is different forever. You've got to try this, right? There's this fervency and conviction
Right.
that any new convert carries with them, and they can't help but want to share that experience with the world because
Mm.
it's been so profound for them.
Right. Okay. Sure. I'm just thinking about being 12 years old. I'm still there. And I cannot imagine. I mean, I had friends that were vegetarian when we were in high school. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it happens, but I just that wow. Anyway,
So
um,
I did my undergrad at Bastyr University, which is one of the leading naturopathic universities in the United States. And I got my bachelor's degree there in nutrition and exercise science. And then I started my practice immediately. I also took up running. When I was a teenager, I had very severe seasonal affective disorder. Living in Alaska
In
was
Alaska,
definitely
of
a strong
course.
computer. Yeah, yeah. And in hindsight, I can also see that as a teenage girl living in Alaska on a low-fat vegan diet, I was missing some really, really important nutrients that I needed for mood and brain health.
Hmm.
And that was something that, and this is part of the reason why I ask so many questions, speak so much to nuance, and can appear so controversial is because I've been doing this for so long. I've been made the fool so many times.
Hmm.
I've thought I've known and then had to relearn that now I realize we don't know much of anything. Like, we don't know jack. The field of nutrition is less than 150 years old. We did not discover and name vitamin A until the beginning of the 20th century. Before that, yeah. Before that, we were still talking humors, and diseases were by, things in the air and too much like stagnation in your blood, right? Like, it was all very much still derivative of like Greek and Roman
Right.
Hippocrates type stuff. So,
Wow.
yeah, this is a very new field. If you think about other fields like biology or even astronomy, how much more experience we have in those fields than we do nutrition.
Hmm. Wow.
And the field of nutrition began as, how do we determine what are the best foods to give our soldiers as they go into battle? And this was for World War One. And
Right.
that's where the first nutrition guidelines came out of.
That's very different from what we should be eating, I assume.
It's very different than today, for sure. And it's evolved. Our nutrition definitely has evolved a little bit since then, but general guidelines are still largely based on what was promoted and became popular in the 50s and 60s. Because that's really when we transitioned out of having to worry about starvation and
Hmm.
undernourishment, right? Chronic deficiency. And when we as a nation kind of flipped over into this place of overabundance,
Right.
and things like heart disease started being very commonplace. And when our US senators were starting to die of heart disease in the 1950s, that's when that's when the US government started looking at nutrition from a chronic disease standpoint rather than a deficiency, starvation standpoint.
That's fascinating. Oh my gosh. Um, ooh, I did not know that. I mean, there are so many things that connect in that area. Like, so, coming out of the depression
Mhm.
and then people going to war directly after that practically, and then, then all of the convenience foods.
Right? That was one thing World War II gave us, was the industrial investment in effectively convenience,
Mhm.
because women were in the workforce.
Didn't have time for all that
And
stuff.
right, right.
Yeah.
And then we also had these new hydrogenated vegetable fats that we needed to put to good use, because at that
Needed.
we created them, we got to keep using them, right? Seems to be sort of how things go. Because during World War II, housewives were told to save their bacon fat, and basically save the bacon fat for the boys. And the bacon fat would be sent off, I don't know where, there's probably some kind of collection place in the city, but you would take your animal fats because they would be used in munitions making.
Oh, oh, okay.
Yeah. And so because we were devoting that for munitions, partially hydrogenated vegetable oils came into the diet as a replacement.
Okay. And look at what we did. Look at what we did with all of that.
Look at what we did. All I can think of is the Disney cartoons like glorifying science, right? Tomorrowland, like all of that shiny science has all the answers. Science is our future. And it was, I mean, it was hubristic and it was our, it's just
Yeah.
our
Everything
naive glow.
plastic, everything ready to go and already wrapped up for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Microwave it in the plastic because it'll be faster and
And it'll all be fine because we didn't know what we didn't know.
but now we do. Um, but so and then oh, wow. And so then you said you were vegetarian for 14 years?
13 years. Yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's like to your 20s.
I was in my mid-20s when I started eating meat again. And that was hard. That was really hard for me. My body started telling me it wanted meat about a year to a year and a half before I was willing to give it a try.
Mhm.
Because it was effectively against my moral and ethics, right? My standards to eat meat. And I was also on the board for Earth Save Seattle.
Yes, you were.
Of course I was.
And so you're hearing your body say this and saying, shh, shh,
Yeah.
you
And I
don't know
was
what you're
like,
talking about.
exactly. I was like, that's weird. I'm just going to ignore that. Oh, that meat looks good. That's weird. I'm going to ignore that. And then it started smelling good. I'm like, that's extra weird. I'm going to ignore that. And this was post grad, so I had finished my bachelor's degree and I was taking a certification in health coaching. Um, I was in New York City and I had been in class that day, and our instructor had been talking about various forms of oppression and that everyone experiences oppression. Everyone has had an experience of oppression in their life. It doesn't always look the same, but we want to be mindful of all of the different ways that people, regardless of their gender, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their wealth, everyone has experienced the feeling of being oppressed in one way, shape, or form, right? And just to be mindful of that.
Mm.
Um, and then after that, I went to a cooking class, and this woman was talking about how she had been a macrobiotic vegan. It's like vegan's not enough for her. She went like macrobiotic vegan,
Like
whole
super
next
vegan.
level.
Yeah.
And one day she was just walking down the streets of Manhattan, and as she stated it, her body literally stopped in front of a burger joint and would not move until she went in and got a burger.
Mm.
And she went in and she got a burger, and it changed her life. Like her energy was through the roof. She had like, oh my gosh, it was incredible, right? And list like those two, something happened in my brain where the lecture from earlier and what this woman was telling me synthesized in my brain. And I had this realization that effectively what I was doing was I was oppressing my animal body by denying it what it was asking for.
Mm. Yeah.
And this is something that I would never do. If a client came up to me and they said that they were having cravings, I would never tell them not to honor that wisdom that their body was reflecting to them.
Mm.
And so I had this new, like, come to Jesus moment where it was like, girl, you're gonna have to try meat.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, maybe you'll get lucky and it will make you violently ill, and then you can say you tried and be done with this,
Right.
right? Um, and I was like, well, let's give it a shot. So I went to Whole Foods and I got like a sample of their little, like they used to do this beef, like a beef roast thing that they would slice up. So I got a sample of the beef. And because I was sat on the board of an environmental vegetarian advocacy group, right? Like I took my little sample of meat and I found an aisle where there was nobody there because, oh my gosh, what if someone saw me?
Oh,
The horror, the shame. And I ate it. Much to my dismay, it was not disgusting. It actually tasted pretty good. So I went back to the deli counter and I ordered a 3-ounce portion to take home and turn into a taco. I was like, well, maybe this will give me like horrible stomach cramps and I'll be violently ill and then we can be done with this, right?
Get out
And
of my
say,
system.
exactly, exactly. That did not happen. I also did not have a utterly transformative experience where my energy shot through the roof and my life was amazing. It was not like that either, but it wasn't bad. And so, I was like, well, your body's asking for this. You know how to be a vegetarian. You've done that for long. You can always go back to doing that. But your body received this well, and you need to you got to keep going and see what comes of this,
Mm.
right? Because it's asking for it. There's something there. So I started eating meat again. And for me, beef was the first thing. Beef was the first thing I wanted. It was what my body was craving. And I found over time, not a lot of time, I found relatively quickly that I was more focused. I had more clarity of thought. I was able to sit down and be focused more. For a long time after that, I would always make sure to eat a very hearty portion of beef before I gave any lectures or did any talks or speeches, because it was just like, boom, I'm there. I'm not spacey, I'm present, I'm grounded, I'm clear, I'm focused.
Hmm.
It was very helpful in satiation. I wasn't as hungry as often. My energy levels were more stable after I introduced meat. And the chronic subclinical anemia that I had experienced for so much of my adolescence and adult life
What
was
your
suddenly
family was worried about.
what my family was worried about. Yeah. And it was never, I was never really, really anemic, but there were times when I wanted to donate blood and I couldn't. And so that's where I hovered, right? It was never clinical,
Right.
but I couldn't always donate blood.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so, excuse me, is that's super inspiring. And I love that your vulnerability, your honesty about that, because it's such a like a hot topic right now.
It is. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
everyone's pushing to be vegan, especially, if you want to be sustainable in this world.
And
That's
that's a load of hooey, if I'm honest. Like, that's crap. And I mean, I'm not just saying that. I promise you, I'm not just saying that. The Environmental Protection Agency, their most recent data is from 2020. And when you look at global greenhouse gas emissions, the entire agricultural industry, not just meat, the entire agricultural industry, everything that the United States produces to be consumed, accounts for about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's it. And I found a paper that kind of teased it out a little bit and effectively hypothesized that if the entire country stopped eating meat, it would only reduce America's greenhouse gas emissions by 2.5%.
oh, what?
Based on modeling, yeah, but they did some statistical modeling.
Oh,
So this is not what we need to be up at arms about. What we need to be up at arms about are the really heavy hitters of global warming, which is our industry and our transportation.
mhm.
And most of our transportation is the transporting of the crap that we buy on Amazon that gets trucked across the country to the warehouses, right? So that we can have delivery in 24 hours or less. Like, these are the big, big things that we're doing without thinking that are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions more than that burger that you feel guilty about eating.
Got it. I mean, I think that there's also a big movement for regenerative agriculture.
Yes.
So raising your animals humanely and
Yes.
having them contribute to healthier soil and then healthier plants and stuff like that. So I think that there's also that, but I just
Absolutely.
not, we all know that Amazon is bad. Um, and and then we just it's so convenient and we are just
It is.
convenience is like everything for us. And it's just,
It's really interesting because I think, to some extent, at least for the duration of my lifetime, there has always been a value of getting what you want when you want it, right? Like,
Mhm.
kind of that marketing of, oh, you deserve this, you should have this. And I've watched, over the last 45 years, I've watched how that sort of ethos of more for your money and I deserve it has created has driven industry to make it easier for us to have what we want when we want and as much as we can handle. And then we get into this position where everything is so convenient. And this was the idea in the Jetsons. The idea was that all of that convenience would free us up to have time to do the things
right?
that we love. But what have we done with all of this free time that where we're not making home cooked meals and we're not having to go to 7 different stores to get, stuff for a kid's birthday party? We're working
Right.
or we're scrolling.
Right. Right.
Even worse. It's like it's I have it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because it's almost that culturally we're trapped in something that is making us desperately ill, physically and mentally.
Right.
And we're so deeply entrenched in it, and it is so difficult to find your way out of it. And everyone's way out of it is going to look differently. If they're able, right? If you're committed and able to get out of it, it will look different.
Hmm.
What I see in my little lens of the world, right? And I ended up leaving the country, and like that's how I got out of it. Of course, not everyone can do that.
Right.
Most people will not be able to do that. One of the things that I have noticed though in my practice, particularly in the last four years or so, since COVID, when everyone was locked in their house, and I'm from the West Coast, so I'm from the West Coast in a tech area. So when we went into lockdown, we stayed in lockdown for a year and a half. The kids didn't go to school. Everyone, there are many businesses for whom they have not yet returned to office full time. People
Yeah.
are still working from home 4 years later.
Right.
And they're just starting to say, okay, 2 or 3 days a week, come into the office, right? What that did is that then created an environment where the line between your real life and your work life became so blurred that it disappeared. Where people who once were able to walk up the stairs to get to the office could get up and walk 600 feet to go to the bathroom are now walking up one flight of stairs to get to their office and 10 feet to get to their bathroom.
Hmm.
So even though we were sedentary before, right, like that bar was not as low as it could
Talk
go.
about convenience.
Talk about convenience, right? And then we have this blow up of Uber Eats, and now you don't even have to go out to your favorite restaurant. It's going to come to you. You don't even have to leave. And we're like more, of course, we're anxious and depressed. We're living like zoo animals.
Mm.
We've been watching them be anxious and depressed for decades. And they
Oh,
have a more lovely environment to hang out with, a lot of them do, than we do, right? It's not some crummy little apartment on the 7th floor of a city.
right. Oh my goodness. I mean, just it, and I said this way back in the beginning of the podcast, like, all these things of convenience. And so now I'm working in healthcare.
Mm,
And the older generations are like in the office all the time because
yeah.
they had the cigarettes pushed on them. You're going to be so cool. This is so good for you. And you're going to feel good. You're going to feel so cool. And alcohol was like,
Yep.
everyone was doing it. And now all the plastics and the convenience foods and everything. And
Yeah. And
just
now they're spending
wow.
their retirement
Right.
going to doctor's appointments.
Or sick or stroke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, it just is so sad.
And our generation is set up to be worse off if we do not fight to get out of what the pandemic created for a lot of people. If we don't push against that, if we accept that as the new reality, what you see in the medical office will be happening 10, 15, 20 years earlier with our generation.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if that's what our children grow up with, seeing as normal, they will have it worse off. And current statistics are already saying that children, today's children, have a lower life expectancy than their parents do. And this is the first time in recorded history that the children are not expected to live as long as their parents.
Ooh, I did not hear that. Wow. Yeah, we've got to break that chain, break all
It
the,
has got to be broken.
yeah.
If there's anything that is not sustainable in this country, it's our healthcare system and our means of dealing with disease.
Ooh, there's a little,
I know it's really heavy, but what I
yeah.
want to say is that what I see, in my tiny little sliver of the world, what I see when people come to me and they're like, "Can I curse? Is that okay?"
Yeah.
Okay, okay. When people come to me and they're saying, "I'm sick of feeling like shit. I don't want to do this anymore. I know I need to eat better. I'm really struggling because my work environment is set up like this. And then I've, got kids or I've got this going on or this, that, and the other, and I can't see my way through the forest." And we start working together. What I'm consistently seeing now over the last 3 or 4 years is that when people start changing their diet and they start getting the nutrients that their body has been asking for, that they may not even be aware that their body is asking for it, because we're also not taught to tune into our bodies and listen to
100%.
these messages and understand them,
Right.
right? When they start getting that food in and they start feeling a difference, their energy levels improve and they stabilize, they have more clarity of thought, they are able to end their workday and actually do something that they enjoy rather than hit the drive-through on the way home because they're too exhausted to think, eat dinner in the car, or maybe take it home and eat it at the table, and then sit in front of Netflix because they're
Don't
just
have
brain
energy
dead.
to do,
You're just
yeah.
brain dead. You don't
Yeah.
have energy. Right. That's the norm. When that starts to shift, people then have the energy and the vitality to start thinking about the other things that they want to shift in their life. And I have this energy. I feel so much better. I bet I would feel even more better if I stopped answering emails
After.
after 6 p.m. If I stopped committing to going to meetings where I'm not actually needed. If I started setting boundaries at work, and then they have the energy and they have the wherewithal and they have the internal strength now to start to push against those toxic work boundaries that are eroding at their quality of life. And they start setting limits at work, or they start setting limits with their children,
Mm.
hard things, or where any relationship that's taking a bit too much from them, right? They start setting boundaries with friends, and then they claim even more vitality, and then there's just this snowball effect. And so I've been watching people. It's so exciting, actually. It's so thrilling because I'm watching people now be like, "I'm telling my boss no, I'm leaving work at this time. I don't care if I don't get the raise because I'm now going to resume this hobby that I haven't done in 10 years that gives my life meaning.
Mhm.
I'm taking a sabbatical from work for 3 months because I need to reassess what's important to me. I need to lean in and commit to my health. I need to restructure my life in a healthy way and then reintegrate work to see how work fits into my life,
Wow.
right? Rather than see how I can fit myself into the demands of my team, my multiple bosses, and the stockholders' need for ever increasing profits.
Right. Yeah. Well, or even just, with the workplace being such a stressful place for many people, uh,
Mm-hmm.
then, adding your life in, see how I feel afterward,
Yeah.
that type of thing. And then, so that's amazing. Like, that's so empowering.
It's incredible. And the first one or two times that I saw it happen, I was like, wow, look at this
Oh,
person go. And then now I know when someone is staying with me for 6 months or longer to move through their, to get their diet dialed in, to be super supportive, to get some health objectives met. When they commit at the onset for that length of time, I know, I'm like, you are going to have a life-changing experience. I may not tell them that straight out of the gate, but I know, I'm like, oh yeah, things are going to change for you, honey, and it's going to be amazing.
oh, oh my gosh, what a great place for you to be.
It's incredible. I mean, I always knew food was magical, but the older I get and the more time I spend in the field, the
Hmm.
more opportunities I have to see like just how incredibly powerful nutrients are.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter, if you can find a way to be vegan, if that's really important for you, and you can find a way to be vegan that does genuinely meet all of your nutrient needs. And you know that because you're tracking your nutrients, and you know that because you're getting blood testing to confirm.
Hmm.
Amazing, fantastic, thank you. Show me your food logs because I'm super curious.
Hmm.
What the body needs is the body needs nutrients. It doesn't need a Mediterranean diet or a vegan diet or a paleo diet or a keto diet. It needs nutrients. We know of about 100, 150 nutrients that are essential for the body.
That's a lot,
And that's the tip of the iceberg.
right?
That's the tip of the iceberg because there's a lot more about nutrition that we don't know than what we do know.
Yeah.
We have not yet determined that things like antioxidants are essential for human health. That is not, our governing bodies have not yet declared that antioxidants are an essential part of the diet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But things like vitamin C, vitamin D, iron, selenium, right? These we know are essential. Of the known nutrients that are tracked and recommended daily intakes, 98% of Americans don't meet 100% of all essential vitamins and minerals.
What was that percentage?
98.
Percent are
90
not getting the right
are
amount.
not getting enough.
Mm.
Correct. 98 out of 100 people are nutritionally insufficient. The more we restrict foods, particularly nutrient dense foods like shellfish and meats and our animal proteins, the greater our odds that we are going to develop a nutrient deficiency that depletes our health and quality of life. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but if you're going to do it, honestly, even a degree in nutrition was not sufficient enough for me
I'm sure.
to not prevent illness.
Mm.
I'm sure I had a vitamin D deficiency. Nobody ever tested that back then. I flirted with anemia all the time. I developed irritable bowel syndrome. And so I was losing a lot of opportunity for nutrient absorption there because I couldn't keep anything in my system for 10 years. Right. And so there's so many factors that need to be considered. And when you get on social media or you read a really powerful book that says this is how you have to do things, or this is what's appropriate for human health, or this is what you have to do to save the planet, this is the only way to be sustainable. Remember that you as a human being, your mind, your body, your spirit also needs to be factored in to the question of what will be sustainable.
Ooh, yeah. I love that you bring it back to that too. Like, there's so much education, there's so much to know, and then people can say you need to do this, but there's also like you need to listen to your body. And that's so important.
Absolutely.
I mean, you were a vegetarian for 13 years and
Yeah.
you were ignoring your body, but knowing your body was saying those things. But so I love, and I know, one of the things that you had said in your guest forum was that you wanted to say, meat is not, how did you say that? Basically meat is not the enemy. Like we,
Yeah.
and so that is, it's sort of uh contradictory to what a lot of people are saying, but that's also, that's exactly who you are. And I'm here for it. But I think it's also, just like going to the doctor, you have to be your own advocate. You need to listen to what your body is saying, and you need to do what's right for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people feel guilty about liking meat, and you don't need to do that. That's not
Mhm.
that's not helpful. That's not useful.
Yeah.
Meat provides so many important nutrients that we tend not to get enough of in the diet, particularly as we are getting older. For kids who are growing up, they need so much nutrition. And as we hit middle age, as women start to go into perimenopause and menopause, as men get into 50 and older and their testosterone levels start to decline, we need more protein, and we need more protein with all of the essential amino acids in it, which animal protein provides in a much more abundant and readily accessible form for the human body.
Hmm.
And often that's why people like meat is because it's giving their body something that it needs, right? And for those who are concerned about saturated fat and cholesterol, little known fact, because it was very, very quietly changed back in 2015, the USDA stopped recommending that we restrict foods high in cholesterol because it didn't do a damn lick of good. And the
Ooh.
research never supported quality research that followed up on what Ansel Keys published in the 1950s did not support the hypothesis that the cholesterol you eat becomes the cholesterol that lines your arteries and gives you a heart attack.
Not connected specifically.
Not connected. Nope.
E.
Yeah. Now, for some reason, that did not get splashed all over Time Magazine, CNN, Fox News, any of it. Very quiet change. Nothing to see here, right?
I mean, I
We
guess
haven't been wrong the last 70 years. No, 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 that didn't happen.
I mean, there's also, there was the argument about like eggs and salt and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's, we there have been, maybe that's partially why they're like, well, we're not going to say that very loud because, we've been loud about things before and then we've been had to take it back, right? But who knows? But just, listen to your body, man, and eat as healthy as you can. Eat healthy food. If you're
Yeah.
gonna eat meat.
Because the science is not as clear on nutrition, I always, when I'm looking at overall dietary recommendations, very
Mm.
general guidelines, right? When I'm talking on my podcast, when I'm, writing blog posts and things, I'm getting really general about it. I like to dovetail what we're seeing in research with what has worked with humanity throughout the ages. Science doesn't have all the answers. And when we look back at how humanity has evolved, that can offer some clues to fill in the gaps.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I will say the research is very clear that if you compare any diet against a standard American diet, that diet, whether it's keto or vegan, is going to come out being better for human health because effectively how we eat in the United States is the worst way to eat as a human being
Oh,
in history.
oh gosh.
Aside from starvation, starvation will kill you quicker. The standard American diet will kill you more expensively.
Wow.
Neither is a good choice.
No. Wow. That's a lot to think about. My goodness.
Yeah,
Um,
so we want to go back to look at, look at your ancestors. If you are of Russian heritage or Eastern European heritage, what works well for your body will probably be slightly different than someone who is of Asian heritage.
hmm.
So there are clues there. There are clues within your genetic line about what foods may work well for you, what foods may not. And then we just kind of have the overall overarching sense of what did humans eat before World War One, World War
Real.
Two,
I
before
mean,
industrialization.
what was eaten before then? I mean, I wasn't
Wherever we
sure.
could, whatever we could grow or get our hands on, right?
Right.
It was all very seasonal. So we didn't have bread all the time in
Yeah.
all the quantity that we do now. We didn't have all the meat all the time in every quantity we do now. We
Mhm.
didn't have avocados 12 months out of the year. I mean, for those who are advocating for a vegan diet being sustainable, tell me how an avocado imported from Mexico that you're eating in New York is a more sustainable option than me getting a steak from my rancher at the farmer's market.
Mm.
Like, it doesn't compute, particularly when you look at the EPA chart that shows that transportation and industry account for, together nearly 50% of greenhouse gas emissions.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh gosh. Right. And so I I was telling you that before we started talking, I was just coming from the farmers market. So I'm just such a huge proponent for the farmers markets and farmers in general. Like go, find local as best you can because the
Yeah.
farther something is coming to you, the farther it's coming to you, the less good it is for you. And I've said this before, one of my guests over a year ago had said that was 80% of the nutrition in your lettuce goes away the second you cut it. So, grow your
I
own,
I
raise your
don't
own.
buy, yeah, I don't necessarily buy that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Um, because the nutrition, when you cut a piece of lettuce, right, you break open the cells
Hmm.
and oxygen gets inside and it starts to degrade. Yes.
Okay.
But chopped up lettuce in a bag is not, it's not macerated lettuce, right? It's not like you threw that lettuce in a blender. There's all those cells inside the four corners of the cut piece of lettuce that are
Only in the
untouched.
nutrition. Yeah. Okay.
Right? There's nutrition there. And you are better off eating that bag of salad or even eating a can of peas than you are not eating vegetables at all.
Right.
I don't care how you like them. I just want you to eat more of them.
Yeah.
Because all vegetables, whether they're canned, whether they're frozen, whether they're grown in your own backyard, or whether they're deep fried at your favorite restaurant,
Vegetables are better than no vegetables.
vegetables are better than no vegetables. And I am excluding McDonald's French fries from that definition of vegetables. Okay. I don't consider French fries to be like, that's not in the category of what I'm talking about, not beige
Okay.
food, colorful vegetables, right? They are
Well, potatoes
so
have
much.
lots of potassium, right?
Potatoes do have a lot of potassium. Yes, you're right. They do have a lot of potassium. And this is okay. However, if you are somebody who has pre-diabetes or diabetes, I'm not going to recommend potatoes as your primary source of potassium. This
Yeah.
is where the nuance comes in, right? This is where you have to take anything you see on social media and filter it through what is appropriate for you and your body and your family and your lifestyle and your sanity.
Mm-hmm. Oof.
That's a
Yeah.
lot to filter through.
It is, that is a lot. Yes. But it's also important, and I'm so glad that you were here to just like put it out there, lay it down, man. And
Anytime.
um,
Anytime. I'm more than happy to.
And I'm so glad to be wrong about the lettuce. That's totally fine. Somebody told me that, and maybe my percentages were wrong, but but my point is, don't make it come on a big truck.
Yeah.
It's better
Yeah, if
maybe
you
not on
have
a
the
truck.
option not to, if you have the option not to. And one thing too that listeners can do is the food that is on sale in the grocery store tends to be the stuff that is in season in
Mhm.
your area. And it is also cheaper, right? So that's one way that you can be both financially sustainable and pardon me, environmentally sustainable is to look for what is on sale in your neighborhood because not everybody, it's funny. I've lived in San Diego and I've lived in Seattle, and in San Diego, at the end of the last hour of the farmer's market, they would slash produce prices
Don't have to
significantly.
bring it back. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could go late in the day and buy like bags of avocados for like $2, all this stuff super, super cheap. In Seattle, they never did that. And it was more expensive at the farmer's market than it was at Whole Foods. And it made it so hard unless you are very wealthy or you're on food stamps because they had a wonderful food stamp program.
Mhm.
But unless you were on either extreme of the economic demographics, it was just not financially feasible to get the bulk of your produce from the most sustainable choice
Sure.
that we, which is just so, again, breaks my heart.
Fair. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But there's also like, I mean, if you see what's being grown at the farmer's market, you would know what's seasonal and what's available to you locally. And because you don't, if you're buying avocados, you know they're not local unless you live in Mexico.
Unless you're in San Diego.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, but I think that, just I can't say it enough. Just like be mindful about where your food is coming from and
Yeah.
get it as local as you can and just be aware of how it's grown, how it is raised, that type of thing.
Yeah, ask questions. And I mean, with everything, we can't make assumptions.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
always better to ask a stupid question than to make a false assumption.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I love the because I just love farmers markets so much. Like there was I can't remember where I first saw it, but there was like I think it was a bumper sticker that said like no farms, no food.
Hmm.
KNOW, no farms, no food. Um,
Nice.
and I love that. And I also just love, knowing your farmer, and like you're saying, you're asking the questions, like know how things are being raised and grown and stuff like that, so that you're not like, oh, my farmer's so great, and then they spray all the stuff and you're eating all the pesticides, and that's
Right. Right.
unfortunately not as helpful as not without.
And they also can give you wonderful ideas on how to prepare some of those more exotic, weird looking veggies
Yep.
that maybe you're feeling brave and you want to try, but you have no idea what to do with it,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Ask the folks at the farmers market.
Right? I mean, I at the farmer's market this morning, I was like, I want to make some sauce. Like tomatoes are in season. I'm gonna make a pasta sauce. And so I told them that, and I'm like, I'm, filling my little bags with tomatoes, and they're like, you want to make sauce? Like we've got these tomatoes, they've like scabby or whatever. So I got like 10 pounds of tomatoes for $8.
Oh my gosh, that's
I
awesome.
was like, dude, you guys are awesome. Yeah. So, if you talk to the farmers, you might find deals like that and they might be able to hook you up, or, I don't know. I just love farmers. And I would almost I kind of want to say ask if you can volunteer or something. If you volunteer for something, you can maybe get something out of it. I don't know. But anyway, back to Aimee. I I appreciate you so much. I love that you like blow my mind daily with your posts, and I look forward to learning more from you. But so when I say the word sustainability to you, Aimee,
Mm.
what does that mean?
The first thing that comes to mind is just a sense of equilibrium and peace.
Mhm.
That if I'm sustainable, because I talk about sustainability all the time with my clients, but it's typically more focused to creating sustainable lifestyle habits that will improve their health. Like, how can we figure out how to change your diet in a way that you can sustain so that the results you experience are also sustainable
Right.
over time?
Yep.
And that anything that ends up being sustainable ends up being something that gives us a sense of peace and calm because we got it figured out.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. And I love also that it's not even related to your topic so much. It's,
You're right.
it's that's part of life. That's part of life. And sustainability is a huge word, and you have to do what's right for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I
the
mean,
nutrition is just a piece of who you are.
right. Right. And I think too, like when we're thinking about environmental sustainability and what we can do for our planet, we also have to take into consideration what is sustainable for us as individuals and as a species, right? What is realistic and sustainable for us?
Hmm.
Because some of the well-intentioned choices that are being made ultimately are not realistic and
Hmm.
not sustainable.
Right. Okay. That's really good. And then, so my last question is how, oh, I hope that people are super inspired by this, and just like, like me, your mind has been blown a little bit and it's been expanded, and you have all of these thoughts, and you want to learn more. How can someone find Aimee Gallo?
I can be found on Instagram at Vibrance Nutrition. That's VIBRANCE Nutrition. And I also put out a podcast each week called Blasphemous Nutrition, where I, just like today, kind of dive into the nuance. And because I live in sort of the gray area of nuance, anything I say is considered blasphemous by somebody out there because I live in neither extreme.
I love it. I love that you just question everything. Like, is that really true? Like, it's in books. People say it. Is it true? Like, is that true for me? Is it true for you? Um, very cool.
Yeah.
Um, thank you so much. I've been so looking forward to this, and I'm so thrilled. I just love it. And maybe a trip to Spain is in the book.
Maybe so. Maybe so. You would be very welcome here. I had such a great time, Amy. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you.
Gosh. Oh my gosh. So you guys look up the podcast, look her up on Facebook, on Instagram, because her posts are just freaking outstanding. And you learn so much. Why are you not